Welcome back to Scandinavian Cookbook. I'm Sylvia, and today I'm making a Janssons Frestelse, which is a Swedish casserole dish, especially popular to make for Christmas. And I actually spent Christmas in northern Sweden this year. I am at a cabin in northern Finland right now, but I first made this last week for Christmas in Sweden. My friend Josephine is half Norwegian and half Swedish, so when she found out I was going to be spending Christmas in Sweden, she first sent me a long list of food that I needed to buy at the grocery store, just like all of her favorite Swedish foods. And then her mom sent me a couple of her favorite recipes, including her recipe for Janssons Frestelse, which is very popular to eat in Sweden for Christmas. And she said, I have to make this for Christmas. And I think the name is so funny. Janssons Frestelse. Frestelse means temptation. I think it's so funny because if you look at what this is, it's kind of anything but tempting. I had considered making this for my channel quite a while ago, but it just didn't sound that good to me, if I'm being perfectly honest. This is a casserole made with potatoes, anchovies, and heavy cream. Which seems like kind of an odd combination. We do love anchovies in Norway as well for Christmas, but baking it with potatoes and cream just, I don't know. It wasn't tempting. It wasn't tempting. That's the honest truth. However, since my friend's mom was so kind to send her recipe, I did make it, and I loved it so much I really regretted not filming it, because I would love to share this recipe on my website, ScandinavianCookbook.com. So when I got to this cabin, I decided to make it again. It's that good. And it's that simple. It's quite great cabin food, actually, because there aren't that many ingredients, and you just put it all in a casserole dish and bake it in the oven. Easy peasy. I am linking the recipe in the description box below, and while you're there, click subscribe for more Scandinavian recipes. I've already cut the 2 onions into thin pieces, and I've cooked them for about 10 minutes on low heat in just a tiny bit of butter. You don't want to brown the onions, you really just want to get some of the moisture out of them. You're not fully caramelizing these, you're just cooking them a bit first. So I did that first, and now I am going to cut up the potatoes. So we're also going to cut the potatoes into thin strips as well. I've already peeled these. And we use faste, I don't know the word in English actually. The kind of potatoes that maintain their structure when you cook them. So not the kind that just kind of fall into mush when you cook them. So first I'm just going to slice these into quite thin slices. I only have the world's tiniest cutting board here. I couldn't find a normal size cutting board. I also feel like everything in this kitchen is very low. Like, I feel like everything's a bit small here. Like, I'm too big for this place. I'm a monster in the hill. Yeah, so cut it into thin slices and then just flip it over and make thin strips. Very simple. This cutting board is so small, I'm just gonna do a few potatoes first. And then we are going to layer the potatoes, onion, and anchovies in a casserole dish. So I've buttered this, and now we always start, the first layer should always be potatoes. And the next layer is onions. I'm just gonna put a thin layer of onions here. I'm trying to keep it fairly even, but I don't think you have to be too exact. And finally, anchovies. So we're using 2 boxes or 200 grams of anchovies. So I'm just going to gently remove these with a fork and then save the broth because we're going to use that in the cream. And I did look at a few different recipes for Janssons Frestelse, and it seems like people have different ideas of how many anchovies they want to put in it. So I think that's kind of up to you as well. If you want strong anchovy flavor or just a hint of anchovies. I quite like anchovies, so I'm happy to be liberal with them. And then we're just going to repeat. So I'm going to cut up another potato. We don't eat Janssons Frestelse in Norway, but we do always have anchovies around Christmas time. So it does smell like Christmas to me, even if it's not my own tradition. And now we are going to combine the cream with 3 tablespoons of anchovy broth. This is 3 deciliters. So Josephine sent me this recipe in Swedish, and as a Norwegian I can read Swedish fairly okay, but there are some words that are different. And the recipe called for anchovy spad, and I didn't know what that was. And when I went to the supermarket, I had just crossed the border into Sweden, and often when I cross the border into a new country, it takes my phone a while to realize where I am and connect to the local network. So I didn't have any internet. So I was in the supermarket and then saw that I was gonna need 3 tablespoons of anchovy spad, and I didn't know what that was. It's not the same word in Norwegian. And it was the day before Christmas. Everyone was so busy. I just felt shy about asking someone what this word means. So I was just in the section with all the fish and the canned anchovies, looking for anything that could say spad. Like what is anchovy spad? And then eventually I thought, it's only 3 tablespoons. I'll just drop it. It's fine. And then I got to the cabin, looked it up, and realized that it's just the broth from the anchovies. So I had in fact bought the anchovy spad as well. I could use it. So that was good news for me. I also have seen some recipes where people put caviar in with the cream as well. I think it's basically how much flavor you want in this. If you want a very fishy flavor, you could probably add more anchovy broth for more of an anchovy flavor, or less if you're not into that. I was happy with the 3 tablespoons, so I'm gonna do the same again. We're just mixing this, and then we're gonna pour half of this mixture over the casserole now. And then the last half is going to go over it around the edges after it's been baking in the oven for 30 minutes. So yeah, about half of this. And then we are going to put some pieces of butter. The recipe is quite vague about this. I also saw that some recipes like adding butter at the top and some do not. So it seems like this is also up to you a bit. So I'm just gonna add a few chunks of butter. There's of course already plenty of fat in it from the cream, so you already have a lot of flavor, but I guess this adds even more. And finally we're gonna add the breadcrumbs. I did not want to buy a whole thing of breadcrumbs just for one dish. So I just made my own breadcrumbs from a piece of polarbrød, like a piece of bread, and then I just crumbled it and toasted it. And yeah, so they'll be more rustic looking breadcrumbs, I guess. Really, I should have made these a bit finer, but they tasted great last time, so I think it'll be okay. Okay, now looks like the oven is preheated, so we're gonna put this in for 30 minutes before we add the rest of the cream anchovy broth mixture. The Janssons Frestelse has now been in the oven for about 30 minutes, so I'm just gonna add the rest of the cream and anchovy broth mixture, mostly around the edges of the casserole dish. Back in the oven for another 15 minutes until you test the potatoes and they're nice and soft, basically.